the elusive Yak Face. Never released in America. It did make it to Canada on the Tri-Logo card, and did get released on a Power of the Force card in some countries like Australia and Europe. But for us in the US, we never got Yak Face. And for years, since I've been collecting vintage Star Wars toys, I heard that Kenner's plan was to have Yak Face as the next mail-away figure. As you know, before each new series of Star Wars figures, they would do a mail-away figure to kind of kick off that next series. Of course, before Empire Strikes Back, you had Boba Fett, and you actually had Bots too as a secret figure. And then during the Empire Strikes Back line, you had a free offer for Forlom. Now, of course, I'm not going to go through each giveaway figure. I've done a video on the mail-aways. But you had the Emperor, who was a mail-in figure, and the Admiral Akbar was offered at the end of the Empire Strikes Back line, promoting Return of the Jedi. And to kick off Power of the Force, you had a free offer for an Anakin Skywalker. And for years, I heard that Yak Face was their plan for Series 2 of the Power of the Force figures. But Kenner canceled the line, so being they already had it made ready to mail out as a mail-away offer, they threw them on a card and sent them to Europe and Australia and Canada, where the figures were selling better than they were in the US. A little better. But you know, I've never seen any evidence of this claim. Now, there was a quote in one of the Steven Sansweet books back in the 90s. In the Star Wars Archive book, it said that Yak Face was safe for a mail-away, but there's no information given that this is true. So I wanted to kind of look into it and see, was Kenner planning to release this as a mail-away figure to launch Series 2 of the Power of the Force figures? Although I believe this story, because I heard it so much since I started collecting vintage stuff, I didn't even really question it, but I did look into it anyway, and my mind's been changed. Yak Face, you are not going to be a mail-away figure for the Power of the Force 2 line. Now, how do I make this claim? Well, we have no really information that leads us one way or the other. Nothing official from Kenner, that is. So let's look a little closer why I believe he wasn't going to be a mail-away figure. Let's look at this early picture for the upcoming Power of the Force line in 1985 done by Kenner. As you can see here, these are mostly prototypes. They vary from the actual release of the figures. Of course, we have Luke and Endor, Anakin Skywalker, who was the mail-away figure for this line, Lando, and oddly enough, for some reason, we have two people listed as an A-Wing. Some reason, some foolish Kenner employee put A-Wing above the Imperial Gunner and A-Wing under the A-Wing figure. And oddly enough, the Ewoks didn't get named here. I guess they just thought they were Ewoks. Now, as you can see here, these are 15 figures for the Power of the Force line in 1985. And before you tell me, hey, there's 17 figures in the Power of the Force line, no, they're not. There's 15. Often people call it the last 17, but no, it's not. It's actually the last 15, as two of the Ewoks, not shown here, was released at the very tail end of the Return of the Jedi line. But what do these photos tell us that would give us a hint that Yak Face wasn't going to be a mail-away offer figure? I mean, it's just a photo. I didn't point it out in the video, but I think it was obvious. It was just a piece of cardboard cutout. They didn't have a produced Yak Face. But it shows us that as early as 1984, before the launch of this line, that they were already getting ready to produce Yak Face. Now, if this was a figure planned for a 1986 line, he wouldn't have been in production before the release of Power of the Force in 85. That's probably the strongest evidence I could find that shows this figure was getting ready to be made for the 85 line and not held over for 86 as part of a promotion. And you're probably saying, well, look at that photo. All the other figures are hard copies, prototypes, except for Yak Face, which was a cardboard cutout. So maybe they were going to release the Power of the Force line, and then halfway through the year, have Yak Face, who they were already designing, come out as the mail-away figure for Power of the Force Series 2. And that's a good assumption, but I really don't think they would have been that far working ahead, especially on a toy line that was already showing signs of dying out. We're going in 1985. Kenner knew the struggle of the new Star Wars line. In fact, they were already toying with an idea to make new Star Wars figures that were more to the scale of the mask figures. Did a whole video on that, so check that out. But could it be that they were just looking ahead? They had the cardboard cutout of Yak Face, so they were saving it for 1986. Then when the line canceled, they went ahead and threw what they had out there for the European collector. Well, let's go to early 1985 and look at Toy Fair. Yep, Yak Face was already on show to the U.S. Toy Fair. Now, if Yak Face was planned to be given away free as a mail-in figure in 1985 to launch the 1986 line, it's very unlikely that he would have been at Toy Fair on show. Well, not unlikely that he would be on show. I mean, we did see Boba Fett at the Toy Fair before he was released, but I think at Toy Fair there would have been some information that said what this was. That, hey, look, we have a new promotional figure coming out. The new Yak Face figure, mail-in figure. I think they would say that. But going through all the Kenner documents, there's no stickers made. As you know, all free figure mail-in offers have the little logo sticker placed on cards. We've never once seen any official thing from Kenner that's a sticker or a roll of stickers or anything. We've never even seen any kind of offer made at Kenner. We can find no evidence. You think by now there would be some kind of documentation to show that Yak Face was in the planning stages of being a mail-in offer. Also, with a toy line that was dying out, would Kenner even want to do a mail-away figure? Do they really want to produce more figures than they needed, just in hopes of a mail-in figure offer, and then have the figures shipped to the stores also? Again, it's possible, but very unlikely. They knew by 1985 that the line was dying out. But we do know that every time there was a line produced, right before the new line, a mail-in figure was offered. So before they officially canceled the Power of the Force line, the Kenner team had to be looking into what was next. Just in case there was a Series 2 in 1986. They had to offer something free. I mean, this is what they always did as far back as 1979. So, was Yak Face gonna be the offer? And that answer is no. We do know what the next offer was gonna be, and it wasn't gonna be a mail-away figure. Kenner's plan was to release a mail-in offer or to put your Power of the Force coins in. Prototypes of the card with the sticker on it have been found. So it would be very odd that, hey, everything survived. We know of everything Kenner was planning, and even at the very end, the Power of the Force coin album, but somehow all the information about Yak Face in the middle of all this would have been lost? That's hard to believe. There's no indication at all to lead anyone to believe that Yak Face was going to be a mail-away figure for the 1986 line. But now you're saying, well, why didn't we get Yak Face in the U.S.? And before you tell me about your friend little Timmy Turner that bought a Yak Face and he never been out of the country or he never even been out of his hometown, how did he get a Yak Face? Well, although they were not officially released in the United States, KB Toy did buy some of them from European countries and other places that couldn't sell them. So some of the KBs did get their hands on some Yak Faces. So if you got a Yak Face in America, or your friend did, that's probably why. It wasn't an official release, but KB did get their hands on some. But why didn't we get an official release? Well, it looks like Yak Face was going to be added to the Power of the Force line just a little later in the series. Maybe he took a little longer to produce and just wasn't ready on time. Or maybe they just wanted to give a little extra push to this line. This isn't unusual. Return of the Jedi line at the very end added 2 Ewoks right before the Power of the Force line. Although we don't have an official reason of why Yak Face was held off in the US, because we do know that he was in the plans when they started making the Power of the Force lines. It probably comes down to what it always comes down to is money. In 1984, Kenner was seeing a decline in Star Wars sales. Power of the Force was the final push. But sadly, that last push for Star Wars figures wasn't doing anything to help the line. Power of the Force figures ended up in clearance bins all around KB Toys, Toys R Us, or wherever you could buy toys. It was clear Star Wars was dead, and Kenner canceled the line. But they still had Yak Face in the works. So why just throw away the figure? I mean, you already spent a lot of money and time on it. Why not go ahead and pack the figures that you have, send them to a market that's already selling Star Wars figures better than the US, not much better, but a little better. And then that way you can kind of not lose any money on making a figure that you're not going to release. You ship it out to European countries, Canada on a tri-logo card, and you make as little bit money back as you can, and then you cancel the line. Anyway, that's a look at Yak Face and if he was a mail-away figure. As far back as the early 90s, I heard that Yak Face was going to be the mail-away figure for the 1986 Power of the Force 2 line. I can find no evidence at all to support this.
Hey, Junkman channel popping though.
Thank you, sir, for that unsolicited testimony.